where John the Baptist was executed. And Josephus lists all these Herodian fortresses that the Romans captured. And they didn't capture Masada, but all these other ones they did. Laughing at them contemptuously with a mighty host. Duck was another one. They were formerly Maccabean fortresses the Herodians took over and refortified. That's where John was killed in Transjordan, if you know your New Testament, or Josephus. That's what the fortresses of the people are. Laughing at them contemptuously with a mighty host, they encircle and capture them, and through terror and fear they surrender them into their hands. They destroy them because of the sins of their inhabitants. Now that's interesting, because that's like the mea culpa in the New Testament. Because of our sins, we have suffered his death beyond us, blah, 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 in the Gospel of Matthew, that the Jews supposedly have sinned in some way. You see, they keep writing this kind of thing because they have the Deuteronomic view that things go bad for you because you've sinned, and things goes good for you because you've been righteous. And that's the way the Deuteronomic history is presented. It was unfortunate that this got into overseas hands, as I've told you, so that people can then say, oh, you see, it's because of the Jews' sins that they suffered all these things. No, the Jews were no more sinful than any other people, probably less so. And certainly more righteous than the Romans, and certainly not involved in the sort of sadomasochism and corruption and pollution and sexual depravity and so on that the Romans were involved in. So why don't we say that the Romans lost everything because of their sins? Why is it the Jews that this has been done? It's because of this kind of thing. And that they took their own literature and then turned it against them. It would be unwise to give this kind of literature out to foreign nations. Like if I had, Americans are sinful, look at the sins of the Americans, we're bad people, then the Russians get a hold of it, and Putin then tells all of the people in Russia, oh, look at the Americans, they even admit how sinful they are, and so on and so forth. Look at Abu Ghraib, and so on and so forth. Look at these Americans, etc. But if you publicize all your dirty laundry for everybody, then they're going to use it against you. That's the way people behave, who may be much more sinful than you are. They're not going to admit their sins or their shortcomings. Anyway, so that's a typical phrase. Then the wind shifts. Its interpretation concerns the leaders of the Kettim who in their guilty council house pass by one man following another. Their leaders come one after the other to spoil the earth. Well, where is this? In Antioch in Syria? No. This is in Rome. How do you know? Well, if you're just intuitive. Either you know it or you don't know it. You know, I can't convince you of it if you can't see it, and vice versa. You know, I can't see how you could think anything other than that, except that we now can pin this down further. A lot of scholars have done this. Roth and Driver have done this, who have the Zealot theory of Qumran origins, and others. This is the year of the three emperors, when the Romans substituted their emperors 3 different times in 1 year, 68 to 69. When Nero was assassinated in 68, and then another general took over, and they fought, and then another general took over, and he fought, and then finally a third general took over, Vespasian from Palestine, and he was proclaimed Roman emperor by his troops in the course of the Palestinian campaign. And then Josephus wrote the Jewish War to, you know, get favor with Vespasian and Titus, his son, who he left in command in Palestine, in order to praise his great exploits in Palestine, to show why his new dynasty, called the Flavians, deserved to be Roman emperors. And that's why Josephus is called Flavius Josephus, as I told you at the beginning of the course, because of services rendered. Part of his services to render to Rome were to apply the Messianic prophecy to their family. The other part is to write the Jewish war. They couldn't write. They were sort of thuggish military commanders. They weren't Julius Caesar, who was an intellectual giant. They were like, you know, hard-boiled centurion types. They needed someone like Josephus to intellectually, you know, praise this campaign. And we read his introduction. This is the greatest war in all history, he said. Okay, so there's a year of, they pass one man. together, and their leaders come one after the other to despoil the earth. Okay, so now we have the rock, chastisement, and we're switching now. Okay, we've done with the Kittim, and we're going to go back, I think, to something that happened in the community itself. The interpretation of this passage is that God will not destroy his people by the hand of the nations, overseas groups, but rather the hand of his elect. Now the elect in the Damascus document were the sons of Zadok who would stand at the end of days. The elect of Israel who would stand at the end of days in the Damascus document. Here, I told you I thought that man who will justify the righteous and condemn the wicked. Here, that shows the parallelism of the two documents. Here, they said God will execute judgment on all the nations with their chastisement of all the evil ones. So it's through the elect of Israel that God will execute judgment. This is the last judgment. It's like the Christians think Peter participates in the last judgment. This group thought the sons of Zadok participated in the last judgment, whether living or dead. And they see this. Here's the evil ones, and their chastisement on all the evil ones of his own people, God's own people. They're evil ones among God's own people, who kept his commandments only when convenient. That's their sin. That they don't really keep the commandments. They do it only when it's easy for them. They are the ones who will be published, and this is what it is meant when he said your eyes are too pure to look, etc., etc., etc. The interpretation is, line 7 of column 5, is they did not lust after their eyes during the era of evil. This is an era of evil. Why stare, you traitors, and remain silent? Here's another important point. When the wicked swallowed one more righteous than he. Now this doesn't concern the wicked priest at this time, but it's going to come up later in the next column. Its interpretation concerns the house of Absalom. I don't know what that means. No one has ever sorted it out, what the house of Absalom is. But Absalom, betrayed his father David and tried to take the monarchy from David before his time, and was killed. And was killed in the process. David wasn't happy that one of his military commanders killed his son Absalom. But still, this is the house of Absalom. Probably has to do with traitors again. And the men of their council, but now we're in the community again, who sat silent at the time of the chastisement of the righteous teacher, and did not aid him, or the rebuke, and did not aid him against the man of lying. And what's the man of lying do? He rejects the law in the midst of all their assembly. That's another characterization of the man of lying. In the Damascus document, he removed the boundary markers that the first had laid.